The research ship, Stellar Mind, drifted silently through space, its hull gleaming like polished metal under the distant stars. Inside the main laboratory, 3 graduate students sat around a curved table, their homework assignment glowing on the screen before them. Zixtal was the first to speak, her crystalline body catching the light as she moved. The Vorthak student was tall and thin, made entirely of living crystal that changed colors with her emotions. Right now she glowed a soft blue, which meant she was curious but calm. "This assignment looks easy," she said, her voice ringing like tiny bells. "We just have to watch some primitive creatures and write about what they do." Neem floated beside her, a cloud of purple gas contained within a clear environmental suit. The Etherian had no solid body, just thoughts and feelings held together by electrical fields. When he spoke, his voice came from speakers built into his suit. "Easy for you to say?" Neem replied, his gas swirling faster. "You Vorthak students always think observation work is simple, but I agree this does not look hard." The third student, Kwa Lin, clicked her mandibles together. She was a Cytherian, looking like a giant ant covered in shiny black armor. Her 6 arms moved constantly as she typed notes on multiple screens at once. "The species we must study is called humans," she said, reading from their assignment. "They live on a planet called Earth in the Outer Rim territories. The professor says they are the dominant species on their world." Dr. Veltharian entered the laboratory, his tentacles moving gracefully as he walked. The Korathan professor was old and wise, with skin that changed from green to purple depending on his mood. Today he was a calm green color. "Ah, my 3 best. Students," he said, settling into his chair. "I see you are reviewing your assignment. What do you think of studying humans?" Zixtal's crystal body flickered to yellow, showing excitement. "They seem very weak, Professor. We looked at the basic information, and they have no natural weapons, no claws, no fangs, no poison. Their skin is soft and tears easily. How did such weak creatures become dominant on their planet?" Dr. Veltharian's skin shifted to a darker green. "That is exactly what you must discover. Your job is to observe them in their natural environment and document their behavior. You will watch how they interact with each other, how they solve problems, and how they deal with danger." Neem's gas cloud pulsed brighter. "But, Professor, they look so harmless. Their bodies are small and soft. They move slowly compared to most species. What interesting behaviors could they possibly have?" "That," said Dr. Veltharian, "is what makes this assignment so important. Sometimes the most interesting discoveries come from studying creatures that seem ordinary at first glance." Kwa Lin typed rapidly on her screens. "According to the database, humans have spread across their entire planet. They build large cities and use primitive technology. Their average lifespan is very short compared to most galactic species." "Yes," the professor nodded. "They live fast lives, which might explain some of their behaviors. Your observation post will be a cloaked station in orbit around their planet. You will have access to all the monitoring equipment you need." Zixtal's color changed to bright orange, showing confusion. "Professor, why do we need to hide from them? They have no space travel technology that could detect us. Their weapons are very primitive." Dr. Veltharian's tentacles moved in what his species used as a shrug. "It is standard protocol when studying pre-contact species. We do not want to interfere with their natural development. You will observe only, never interact." The 3 students spent the next hour reviewing the technical details of their assignment. They would have 3 months to study human behavior and write a comprehensive report. The observation post was already in position, waiting for them to begin their work. "I still think this will be boring," Neem said as they prepared to leave for the observation station. "Watching weak creatures go about their daily lives does not sound exciting." Qualin gathered her equipment with 4 of her arms while typing final notes with the other 2. "Perhaps that is the point. Maybe studying peaceful, harmless species will teach us something about cooperation and social development." As they walked toward the transport bay, Dr. Veltharian called after them. "Remember, students, appearances can be deceiving. Do not make assumptions about what you will see. Observe everything carefully and keep detailed records." The transport ship was small but comfortable, designed for short trips between larger vessels. As they flew toward the observation post, the students could see Earth growing larger in the view screen. It was a beautiful planet, covered in blue oceans and white clouds. "It looks peaceful," Zixtal observed, her crystal body now glowing a soft pink color that meant she felt calm and safe. "The database says they have many different environments," Qualin added. "Forests, deserts, mountains, and oceans. The humans have adapted to live in all of these places." Neem's gas swirled slowly as he watched the planet. "Maybe that is how they became dominant. They learned to survive in many different places while other species stayed in one type of environment." The observation post was invisible to human technology, hidden behind advanced cloaking systems. Inside, the students found a comfortable living space and a laboratory filled with monitoring equipment. Screens showed views from cameras positioned around the planet. "We should start by picking one location to focus on," Qualin suggested. "The professor said we need detailed observations, not general surveys." They decided to study a small human settlement in a mountainous region. The area had forests, rivers, and wildlife, which would let them see how humans interacted with their natural environment. "Look at this," Zixtal said, pointing to a screen showing the human town. "They build their homes close together, but not too close. They seem to like having their own space while still being part of a group." Neem adjusted the camera controls to get a better view. "They move so slowly compared to most species. And look how they walk on just 2 legs. That seems very unstable." As the first day of observations began, the 3 students felt confident about their assignment. The humans seemed exactly as predicted: weak, slow, and peaceful. They went about their daily activities without any sign of the aggressive behaviors seen in most dominant species. "This will definitely be easy," Zixtal said as she started recording their first observations. 3 months of watching these gentle creatures will give us plenty of material for our report." None of them could have imagined how wrong they were about to be. The second week of observations had fallen into a comfortable routine for the 3 alien students. They took turns monitoring the human settlement, documenting everything they saw in careful detail. Zixtal found herself fascinated by the humans' daily patterns. "They wake up when their star rises and sleep when it sets," she noted, her crystal body glowing soft blue as she concentrated. "Very predictable behavior, much simpler than the complex sleep cycles of most advanced species." The town they were watching sat in a valley surrounded by tall mountains covered in green trees. About 2,000 humans lived there, working in various jobs that seemed strange but harmless to the alien observers. Neem had taken a special interest in one human in particular, a male named Jake Martinez. Jake worked as what the humans called a park ranger, which seemed to involve walking through the forests and checking on things. "This Jake human is interesting," Neem said, his purple gas swirling as he watched the screens. "He spends most of his time alone in the wilderness areas, but he does not seem to be hunting or gathering food." Qualin typed notes rapidly with her 6 arms. "According to the human communication signals we intercepted, his job is to protect the natural environment and help visitors who get into trouble. He carries basic tools and a communication device." They watched Jake perform his daily routine. He would drive a small vehicle to different parts of the forest, then walk along marked paths. Sometimes he would stop to examine plants or check on human-made structures. Occasionally, other humans would approach him with questions, and he would always stop to help them. "He seems very calm and gentle," Zixtal observed. "When the smaller humans approach him, he makes his voice soft and moves slowly. It is like he knows he might frighten them if he moves too quickly." The aliens had also begun studying other humans in the town. There was Lisa Campbell, who worked as a veterinarian, treating sick and injured animals. They watched her carefully, handle creatures much larger than herself, using tools and medicines to heal them. "The Lisa human shows interesting behavior toward other species," Qualin noted. "She spends her time helping animals that cannot give her anything in return. This does not match typical dominance patterns." Another human that caught their attention was an elderly male named Bill Rogers, who ran a small store. Every day, young humans would visit his store after their educational activities. Bill would give them small food items and listen to their stories about their day. The older humans seem to take care of the younger ones even when they are not related, Neem observed. "This extended family behavior is unusual for a species that claims individual territory." As the days passed, the aliens began to see patterns in human behavior that confused them. The humans worked together on projects, shared resources with those who had less, and spent time on activities that served no apparent survival purpose. "Look at this," Zixtal said, pointing to a screen showing the town center. "They gather in large groups just to listen to other humans make organized sounds. They call it music, but it serves no practical function." The aliens watched a human gathering where individuals used various tools to create rhythmic noises, while others moved their bodies in coordinated patterns. The humans seemed to enjoy this activity greatly, even though it provided no obvious benefit. "Maybe it is a form of group bonding," Qualin suggested. "Many species have rituals that strengthen social connections." Their observations took an interesting turn when they detected a conversation between Jake and Lisa. The two humans met at a small establishment where they consumed heated plant liquids and talked. Jake mentioned checking on a family of humans who are camping in the remote forest area, Neem reported. He seems concerned about their safety, even though they are not part of his immediate social group. The aliens watched as Jake explained to Lisa that a family with 2 young children had gone camping in an area known for large predatory animals. He planned to check on them regularly to make sure they were safe. "This protective behavior toward strangers is very unusual," Zixtal commented. "Most species only protect their own offspring or immediate pack members." Lisa agreed to help if Jake needed medical assistance for any injured campers. The aliens noted how quickly the two humans arranged to cooperate, even though the situation had nothing to do with their own survival. "Their willingness to help others seems to be a strong behavior pattern," Qualin observed. "Almost every human interaction we have recorded shows some form of assistance or cooperation." The alien students were beginning to develop a picture of humans as an unusually peaceful and cooperative species. Their technology was primitive compared to galactic standards, but they seem to have created a stable society based on mutual aid and resource sharing. They have no obvious predatory behaviors, Neem noted in his daily report. No territorial aggression, no dominance displays, no competition for mates or resources. They seem to have evolved past the need for violence. On the 14th day of their observations, the monitoring equipment detected something large moving through the forest toward the camping area where the human family was staying. The aliens adjusted their cameras to get a better look at the creature. "What is that?" Zixtal asked, her crystal body flickering to yellow with alarm. The creature was massive, covered in thick brown fur with powerful limbs and large claws. It moved through the forest with the confident stride of an apex predator. The aliens quickly accessed their database to identify the species. "It is called a grizzly bear," Kualin read from the information display. "Adult males can weigh up to 800 pounds. They are one of the largest land predators on this planet. And according to these readings, this one is showing signs of disease that affect its brain function." The bear was moving directly toward the camping area where the family was staying. The aliens watched with growing concern as they realized they were about to witness a predator attack on the defenseless humans. "Should we warn them somehow?" Neem asked, his gas cloud pulsing with anxiety. "No," Kualin replied, checking their assignment protocols. "We are observers only. We cannot interfere with natural events, even if they result in harm to the subjects we are studying." The aliens watched helplessly as the massive predator continued toward the human camp. They knew that soft, slow, weaponless humans would have no chance against such a creature. Their gentle, cooperative subjects were about to face the harsh reality of their planet's food chain. "This will be terrible to watch," Zixtal said sadly, her crystal body shifting to a dark blue color that indicated distress. "Those small humans have no way to defend themselves. None of them could have predicted what they were about to witness." Jake Martinez was having a good day as he drove his park service truck along the winding mountain road. The morning air was crisp and clean, and he could hear birds singing in the trees. He was heading to check on the camping family that had registered for a 3-day stay in the remote Bear Creek area. The Davis family had seemed nice when they stopped by his office yesterday. Tom and Maria Davis with their 2 children, 8-year-old Emma and 10-year-old Carlos. They were city folks wanting to experience nature, and Jake always felt good about helping families create outdoor memories. High above, in their invisible observation post, the 3 alien students watched both Jake and the massive grizzly bear moving through the forest. The bear was still several miles from the campsite, but it was moving steadily in that direction. "The Jake human has no idea a predator is approaching," Neem observed, his gas cloud swirling with nervous energy. "He appears completely relaxed and unaware of danger." Zixtal's crystal body had turned a worried shade of purple. "Look at how slowly he moves. Even in his mechanical transport device, he travels much slower than the bear. If he continues at this pace, the predator will reach the camping humans first." Jake parked his truck at the trailhead and grabbed his standard equipment: radio, first aid kit, bear spray, and his service weapon. He always hoped he would never need the last 2 items, but regulations required him to carry them in bear country. The aliens watched him walk down the trail, noting his casual, unhurried pace. He stopped frequently to examine plants or check trail markers, completely unaware that a 800-pound killing machine was approaching the area. His behavior shows no signs of predator awareness, Kualin noted, typing rapidly. Most species have instincts that alert them to nearby dangers. This human seems to have no survival instincts at all. Meanwhile, the grizzly bear was having a very bad day. The disease affecting its brain made everything confusing and painful. Normal bears avoided humans, but this bear could no longer think clearly. It smelled strange scents and heard unfamiliar sounds, and its diseased mind told it to investigate and eliminate threats. The bear had already destroyed part of the Davis family's campsite before they even knew it was there. Tom and Maria had taken the children on a short hike to see a waterfall, leaving their camp unattended. When they returned, they found their tent shredded, food scattered everywhere, and their camping trailer overturned. "Get in the truck!" Tom shouted to his family, but the bear appeared between them and their vehicle. The massive creature reared up on its hind legs, standing nearly 9 feet tall, and roared its challenge. The family ran toward their overturned trailer. Tom pushed his wife and children through a small gap underneath the trailer, then tried to follow them. But as he squeezed through the opening, the bear's claws raked across his back, leaving deep wounds. He managed to get inside the small space, but he was bleeding badly and could barely move. "Daddy," Emma cried, seeing the blood on her father's shirt. "Stay quiet," Maria whispered to the children, holding them close. "Someone will come help us." The bear circled the trailer, occasionally swiping at it with massive paws. The metal groaned and bent under the impacts, but it held together. The pow. Family was trapped in a space barely large enough for the 4 of them, with a rabid predator trying to get to them. High above, the alien students watched in horror as the situation unfolded. "The adult male human is injured," Qualin reported. "He appears to be losing blood rapidly. The family unit is trapped with no escape route." "Where is the Jake human?" Zixtal asked frantically. "He was supposed to check on them." Neem adjusted the camera controls. "He is still on the trail, approximately 2 miles away. At his current speed, he will not arrive for another 30 minutes. "The injured human does not have 30 minutes, Qualin said grimly, "and the protective barrier will not hold much longer under the predator's attacks." Jake was indeed still, walking slowly down the trail, enjoying the peaceful forest sounds. He had no way of knowing that the family he was going to check on was fighting for their lives just a few miles ahead. The bear's attacks on the trailer were becoming more violent. Each swipe of its claws dented the metal further. Maria tried to call for help on her cell phone, but there was no signal in the remote canyon. Tom was growing weaker from blood loss, and the children were crying softly in terror. "I'm going to try to lead it away," Tom whispered to his wife, even though he could barely sit up. "No," Maria said firmly. "You're hurt too badly. We just have to wait and hope someone comes." The bear's next attack knocked one side of the trailer partially off its support blocks. The family could hear the metal beginning to give way under the creature's assault. That was when Jake heard the sound. He was still over a mile away when the bear's roar echoed through the canyon. Jake had heard that sound before, and he knew exactly what it meant. His relaxed walk immediately changed to a running sprint. "Oh no," he said to himself, pulling out his radio as he ran. "Ranger Martinez to dispatch. I have a possible bear encounter at Bear Creek Campground. Send backup and medical immediately." The radio crackled back. "Ranger Martinez, nearest backup is 45 minutes out. Medical helicopter cannot land in that terrain." Jake ran faster than he had ever run in his life, his equipment bouncing as he sprinted down the rocky trail. He could hear the bear roaring again, and now he could hear something else, the sound of metal being torn apart. The alien students watched in confusion as Jake's behavior suddenly changed. The human heard the predator from over a mile away, Neem said in amazement. "His auditory senses are much better than our measurements indicated. Look at how fast he is moving now." Zixtal observed. He has increased his speed by over 300%, but he is running toward the danger, not away from it. Kualin checked their database. This behavior does not match any known survival patterns. When a weak species encounters a strong predator, they should flee or hide. This human is deliberately approaching a creature that could kill him easily. Jake reached the edge of the campsite and saw the situation immediately. The bear was on top of the crushed trailer, trying to tear through the metal to reach the family inside. He could hear crying children and knew he had only seconds to act. He drew his bear spray and his weapon, knowing that neither would be enough against an 800-pound enraged grizzly. But the family trapped under that trailer was depending on him, and Jake Martinez had never failed to help someone who needed him. The alien students watched in absolute silence as Jake stepped into the clearing and shouted at the bear, "Hey! Over! Here!" The massive predator turned toward him, and Jake realized he was about to fight for 4 lives, theirs and his own. The grizzly bear turned away from the crushed trailer and fixed its diseased, rage-filled eyes on Jake Martinez. For a moment that seemed to last forever, predator and human stared at each other across the destroyed campsite. High above in their observation post, the 3 alien students watched in complete shock. Everything they had learned about survival behavior told them that Jake should be running away as fast as possible. Instead, he stood his ground between the massive predator and the trapped family. "This makes no sense," Neem whispered, his gas cloud pulsing rapidly with confusion. "The human is 1/8 the size of the predator. He has no natural weapons. Why is he not fleeing?" Zixtal's crystal body had turned bright red with alarm. "According to our data, that bear weighs over 800 pounds and has claws that can tear through metal. The human weighs maybe 180 pounds and has soft skin that tears easily. This is not a fight. This is suicide." Jake raised his bear spray, a small canister that contained concentrated pepper extract. It was designed to deter bears by causing temporary blindness and breathing problems. But as Jake pressed the trigger, nothing happened. The spray had frozen in the cold mountain air. "Equipment failure," Kualin noted, though her voice was strained. "The human's primary defensive tool is not working." Jake tossed the useless spray aside and drew his service weapon, a standard-issue pistol. The bear charged toward him with terrifying speed, covering the distance between them in seconds. Jake fired 3 quick shots, hitting the bear in the chest, but the bullets barely slowed the massive creature down. "The projectile weapons are ineffective," Neem observed in horror. "They are too small to stop a creature of that size." The bear crashed into Jake with the force of a small vehicle. Jake flew backward, slamming into a tree hard enough to crack the bark. Any normal creature would have been killed instantly by the impact, but Jake rolled to his feet, shaking his head to clear it. "Impossible," Zixtal breathed. "That impact should have broken every bone in his body." The bear reared up on its hind legs again, towering over Jake. Its massive paws, each armed with claws longer than Jake's fingers, swung down toward him. But instead of trying to run, Jake did something that made the alien students question everything they knew about physics and biology. He stepped forward into the bear's reach. Jake wrapped his arms around the bear's massive torso, getting inside the range of those deadly claws. The bear tried to swipe at him, but its paws could not reach Jake when he was pressed against its chest. It was like trying to scratch your own back. The angle was all wrong. "What is he doing?" Kualin typed frantically, trying to understand. The tactical situation. He has made himself more vulnerable by getting closer to the predator. But Jake knew exactly what he was doing. His military training had taught him that sometimes the most dangerous place was also the safest place. Close to the bear's body, he was protected from its most dangerous weapons, those massive claws. The bear tried to bite Jake's head, but Jake ducked and pressed his face against the bear's thick fur. The bear's jaws snapped shut on empty air, inches above Jake's skull. Frustrated, the bear began to shake its body, trying to throw Jake off. Jake held on with strength that amazed the watching aliens. His arms were locked around the bear's torso, and no amount of shaking could break his grip. The bear began to tire from its violent movements, and that was when Jake made his next move. Using techniques he had learned in hand-to-hand combat training, Jake shifted his position. He moved one arm up around the bear's thick neck, while keeping the other arm locked around its body. The bear tried to reach him with its claws, but Jake stayed pressed against its chest where the paws could not reach. Him! He is attempting to restrict the predator's breathing, Qualin realized. But that is impossible. The bear's neck muscles are too strong for a human to compress. Jake was not trying to choke the bear in the traditional sense. Instead, he was applying pressure to specific points on the bear's neck that would restrict blood flow to its brain. It was a technique that worked on humans, and Jake hoped it would work on bears too. The bear began to weaken as the blood flow to its brain was reduced. Its movements became slower and less coordinated, but the technique required Jake to maintain perfect position and pressure for several minutes, and the bear was still fighting back with desperate strength. One of the bear's claws managed to rake across Jake's back, tearing through his uniform shirt and leaving deep gashes in his skin. Blood ran down his back, but Jake did not let go. He adjusted his grip and continued applying pressure to the bear's neck. "The human is injured and losing blood," Neem reported. "But he is not releasing his hold on the predator. This behavior is completely irrational." The fight continued for what felt like hours, but was actually only minutes. Jake's arms ached from the strain of holding on to the massive animal. His injured back sent waves of pain through his body with every movement. But every time he felt like letting go, he heard the children crying softly under the crushed trailer, and he found new strength. The bear's movements were becoming weaker. The restriction of blood flow to its brain was taking effect. Jake could feel the massive animal's heartbeat slowing against his chest, but he also knew that his own strength was running out. His arms were trembling with exhaustion, and blood loss was making him dizzy. "One of us is going to pass out," Jake thought to himself. "And it better not be me." The bear took a stumbling step backward, then another. Its legs were no longer steady under its massive weight. Jake maintained his hold, keeping the pressure on the bear's neck even as his own vision began to blur. Finally, after 17 minutes of combat that defied every rule of nature the alien students knew, the massive grizzly bear collapsed to the ground. Jake went down with it, still maintaining his chokehold even as unconsciousness threatened to take him too. For long seconds, neither the bear nor Jake moved. The forest was silent except for the sound of labored breathing and the quiet crying of children under the twisted metal trailer. The alien students stared at their screens in absolute silence, trying to process what they had just witnessed. A soft, weak, weaponless human had just defeated one of the largest land predators on the planet, using nothing but technique, determination, and an incomprehensible refusal to give up. "Record everything," Zixtal finally whispered, her crystal body flickering through every color in the spectrum as her mind struggled to cope with what she had seen. "No one will believe this without video evidence." Jake slowly released his hold on the unconscious bear and crawled toward the trailer where the Davis family was trapped. He was bleeding, exhausted, and barely conscious, but his first concern was for the people he had risked everything to save. "It's okay," he called out weakly. "The bear is down. You're safe now." In the observation post, high above Earth, complete silence filled the laboratory. The three alien students stared at their screens, watching Jake Martinez slowly crawl toward the overturned trailer, leaving a trail of blood behind him. The massive grizzly bear lay motionless where it had fallen. Zixtal was the first to speak, her crystal body flickering rapidly between different colors as her mind tried to process what she had witnessed. That cannot be real. Our equipment must be malfunctioning. Neem's gaseous form was condensing and expanding erratically, a sign of severe stress in his species. "Run the calculations again," he said, his voice shaking through his suit's speakers. "An 180-pound creature cannot defeat an 800-pound predator in physical combat. It violates every law of physics and biology." Qualin's 6 arms moved frantically across her control panels, checking and rechecking every sensor reading. Her mandibles clicked together in rapid patterns that indicated extreme agitation. "All equipment is functioning normally. Sensor readings are accurate. What we just observed actually happened." The aliens watched Jake reach the trailer and speak softly to the trapped family. "It's okay," he said, though his voice was weak from blood loss. "The bear is unconscious. Help is coming." Through the small gap under the trailer, they could see Maria Davis holding her 2 children close while her injured husband Tom tried to sit up. The children were crying, but they seemed unharmed. "Is it really dead?" little Emma asked, her voice trembling with fear. "Not dead, just sleeping," Jake replied gently. "It was sick, which made it angry and confused. When it wakes up, the other rangers will move it far away where it cannot hurt anyone." Zixtal's body turned a deep purple color that indicated severe psychological distress. "He is comforting the young humans even though he is seriously injured. This protective behavior extends beyond rational self-interest." Jake used his radio to update dispatch on the situation. Within minutes, the sound of helicopters could be heard approaching the canyon. The alien students watched as several human aircraft arrived, carrying medical personnel and additional rangers. Dr. Lisa Campbell arrived with the medical team, carrying a large bag of supplies. She immediately began treating Jake's injuries, while other medics worked to extract the Davis family from under the trailer. "Jake, you idiot," Lisa said affectionately as she cleaned the claw marks on his back. "What were you thinking, fighting a grizzly bear with your bare hands?" Jake winced as she applied antiseptic to his wounds. "I was thinking that a family with 2 kids was about to be killed, and I was the only one who could help them." "You could have been killed?" Lisa pointed out as she started stitching the deeper cuts. "Maybe," Jake replied, "but they definitely would have been killed if I had not done something. That was not really a choice." The alien students listened to this conversation with growing confusion and distress. "He acknowledges that his actions were dangerous," Neem observed, "yet he states that he had no choice. This suggests that his protective behaviors are not voluntary but compulsive." Qualin was analyzing the video of the fight for the 20th time. "I have studied every frame of the combat. The human used techniques that show extensive training in close-quarters fighting, but the strength and endurance he displayed exceed our measurements of human physical capabilities by at least 300%. "Look at this," Zixtal said, pointing to a screen showing Jake's vital signs during the fight. His heart rate, blood, pressure, and adrenaline levels reached dangerous extremes. His body was producing chemicals that temporarily increased his physical abilities far beyond normal limits. The aliens discovered that humans possessed something their databases had not mentioned: the ability to exceed their normal physical limitations in life-threatening situations. Jake's body had essentially poisoned itself with stress hormones to give him the strength and speed needed to fight the bear. "This is a biological impossibility," Neem said, his gas cloud pulsing with agitation. "No species can voluntarily increase their physical capabilities by that magnitude. The strain would cause permanent damage or death." But as they continued monitoring Jake, they saw that his body was already beginning to recover from the extreme stress. His vital signs were returning to normal, and the emergency chemicals were being processed out of his system. Humans, it seemed, were designed to survive their own desperate measures. The medical team loaded Tom Davis onto a stretcher and prepared to transport him to a hospital for treatment of his claw wounds. The children were scared but unharmed, clinging to their mother as they watched their father being treated. "Thank you," Maria said to Jake as the medical team prepared to leave. "You saved our lives. How can we ever repay you?" Jake, now sitting on his own stretcher with his back covered in bandages, looked confused by the question. "You do not owe me anything. This is just my job." "Fighting bears is not in your job description," one of the other rangers said with a grin. "Protecting people is," Jake replied seriously. "Everything else is just details." The alien students recorded every word of these conversations, but they were having trouble understanding the concepts being discussed. "He claims that risking his life for strangers is simply part of his occupation," Kwa Lin noted. "But we have observed his daily activities for weeks. Fighting predators was never mentioned as one of his duties." Zixtal's color had shifted to a sickly yellow that indicated nausea and disorientation. "I need to review our observations from the beginning. Nothing we recorded about human behavior prepared us for this level of insanity," Neem finished for her. "This level of insanity. No rational creature fights a predator 8 times. Its size to protect unrelated individuals." As the helicopters departed with the injured humans, the aliens continued to monitor the cleanup at the campsite. The unconscious bear was loaded into a special transport and taken to a wildlife facility where it could be treated for its brain disease. Jake was taken to the local hospital, where he received additional medical treatment. The aliens watched the human medical procedures with interest, noting how quickly Jake's injuries were healing. "Human medical technology is more advanced than our initial assessments indicated," Kwa Lin observed. "But more importantly, human physiology appears to be optimized for recovering from combat injuries." That night, as Jake rested in the hospital, the 3 alien students sat in their observation post, trying to write their daily report. None of them could find words to describe what they had witnessed. "How do we explain this to the professor?" Zixtal asked, her crystal body now a dull gray color that indicated exhaustion and confusion. "We tell him the truth," Neem replied, though his gas cloud was still swirling erratically. "We tell him that everything we thought we knew about human behavior was completely wrong." Kwa Lin stopped typing and looked at her companions. What if this was not unusual behavior? What if all humans are capable of this kind of combat response? The 3 students stared at each other in growing horror as they realized the implications of that possibility. If Jake Martinez was not an exceptional human, but a typical example of his species, then everything the galactic community believed about Earth needed to be reconsidered. "We need to do more research," Zixtal said finally. "We need to find out if other humans show similar behaviors under stress." None of them could sleep that night, and their dreams were filled with images of soft, gentle creatures transforming into unstoppable fighting machines when threatened. They were beginning to realize that their simple homework assignment had revealed something terrifying about the species they were studying. The alien students spent the next 3 days in frantic research, diving deep into human history and biology through every database they could access. What they found made their initial trauma seem like a minor concern compared to the growing horror of their discoveries. Zixtal had taken charge of researching human evolutionary history, and her crystal body had remained a sickly yellow color for hours as she read report after report. According to this data, humans evolved as persistence hunters, she said, her voice trembling. They would chase prey animals for days until the animals collapsed from exhaustion. Neem's gas cloud was compressed into an extremely dense form, indicating severe stress. I have been studying human military history. They have been engaged in organized combat for their entire recorded civilization. And look at this. They fight not just for resources or territory, but for abstract concepts they call freedom and justice. Qualin had been analyzing human physiology in detail, and all 6 of her arms were shaking as she typed. Their bodies are designed for combat in ways we never recognized. Their forward-facing eyes provide depth perception for tracking prey. Their opposable thumbs allow them to grip weapons. Their upright stance frees their arms for fighting while maintaining mobility. The more they learned, the more terrified they became. Humans were not the peaceful, cooperative species they had appeared to be during casual observation. They were predators who had learned to work together, making them exponentially more dangerous than any solitary hunter. Look at this, Zixtal said, displaying a historical document. During their Second World War, a human named Audie Murphy fought off an entire enemy company by himself. He stood on a burning tank destroyer and used its machine gun to hold back over 200 enemy soldiers for an hour. That is impossible, Neem protested weakly. One individual cannot defeat 200 opponents. The records are verified, Zixtal replied, and there are thousands of similar cases throughout their history. Humans regularly perform combat feats that should be physically impossible. Qualin had found even more disturbing information. I have been studying their emergency response systems. They have entire organizations dedicated to running toward danger to help others. They call them firefighters, police officers, emergency medical technicians, and rescue workers. The aliens learned about humans who ran into burning buildings, to save strangers who jumped into raging rivers to rescue drowning victims, who placed themselves between criminals and innocent people. It was not just Jake Martinez. It was an entire species that seemed programmed to risk their own lives for others. This behavior makes no evolutionary sense, Neem said, his gas cloud pulsing erratically. Self-sacrifice reduces the chance of passing on genetic material. Natural selection should have eliminated this trait, but their research revealed that human self-sacrifice was not random. Humans were most likely to risk themselves for children, family members, and members of their community. It was a survival strategy that prioritized the group over the individual. They are pack hunters, Qualin realized with growing horror. Their willingness to sacrifice themselves for the pack ensures the survival of their genetic material through relatives and increases the overall strength of their social group. The aliens discovered that human civilization was built on the foundation of individuals willing to die for the group. Soldiers who threw themselves on grenades to save their comrades. Ship captains who went down with their vessels to ensure their passengers escaped. Parents who fought impossible odds to protect their children. As they delved deeper into human culture, they found that these sacrificial behaviors were celebrated and honored. Humans told stories about heroes, built monuments to those who died, protecting others, and taught their children that the highest virtue was willingness to help those in need. They trained their young to be like this, Zixtal said in horror. They deliberately encourage these dangerous protective instincts. During their research, they had continued monitoring Jake Martinez's recovery. He had been released from the hospital after 2 days and was already back at work, though he was supposed to be on light duty while his injuries healed. The aliens watched him meet with the Davis family, who had returned to thank him personally before leaving the area. Little Emma Davis had drawn him a picture of a man fighting a bear with the words, "My hero," written in crayon at the bottom. "You don't need to thank me," Jake told the family. "I'm just glad everyone is okay." "Just glad everyone is okay," Neem repeated in amazement. "He nearly died fighting an apex predator, and he acts like it was nothing special." The aliens also observed Jake meeting with Dr. Lisa Campbell for a follow-up medical examination. Lisa was checking his healing progress when their conversation took an unexpected turn. "Jake, I've been thinking about what happened," Lisa said as she examined his bandaged back. "What you did was incredibly brave, but it was also incredibly stupid. You could have been killed." Jake shrugged carefully, mindful of his injuries. "Maybe, but those kids would definitely have been killed if someone hadn't done something. I was the only one there." "But what if you had died?" Lisa pressed. "What would that have accomplished?" Jake was quiet for a moment before answering. "If I had died but the family lived, then I would have made a good trade. 1 life for 4 lives, and 2 of them were children with their whole futures ahead of them." The alien students listened to this conversation in stunned silence. "He has calculated the value of lives and determined that his own is worth less than the others," Qualin said in disbelief. "This is not heroism. This is a fundamental difference in how they value existence." Lisa finished her examination and gave Jake permission to return to full duty. "Your injuries are healing faster than expected," she said. "Human recovery rates always amaze me." "Humans are tough," Jake replied with a grin. "We're designed to take a beating and keep going." "Designed to take a beating and keep going," Zixtal repeated. "He speaks as if combat damage is a normal part of human existence." The aliens spent that evening trying to contact their professor, Dr. Veltharian, to report their findings. But their communications were blocked by some kind of interference. They tried several times before giving up. "We will have to include everything in our final report," Qualin said. "The professor needs to know that humans are not the peaceful species we initially believed them to be." That night, as they tried to sleep, the 3 students were plagued by nightmares about soft, friendly humans suddenly transforming into unstoppable killing machines. They had discovered that beneath the surface of human civilization lay something that terrified them on a fundamental level. "What happens when they develop space travel?" Neem asked during one of his sleepless periods. "What happens when creatures, like Jake Martinez, can travel between stars?" Zixtal's crystal body pulsed with nervous energy. "What happens when a species that fights 800-pound predators with their bare hands decides that other planets have resources they need?" Qualin was running calculations on her computers, trying to estimate human combat effectiveness in different scenarios. Every simulation ended the same way, with human victory through sheer determination and willingness to accept casualties that would break any other species. "We have to warn the galactic community," she said finally. "Earth is not populated by harmless primitives. It is populated by the most dangerous predators in the galaxy, and they are on the verge of developing interstellar travel." The three alien students had come to Earth expecting to study a peaceful, cooperative species. Instead, they had discovered a race of warriors who disguised their true nature behind smiles and kindness, only revealing their lethal capabilities when those they protected were threatened. And the most terrifying part was that Jake Martinez was not considered unusual by human standards. He was just an ordinary park ranger doing his job. The communication block that had prevented the alien students from contacting their professor was finally lifted on the 7th day after the bear incident. When Dr. Veltharian's face appeared on their screen, the three students were shocked to see that his normally calm green skin had turned a deep purple color indicating extreme stress. "Professor!" Zixtal exclaimed, her crystal body flashing bright yellow with relief. "We have been trying to reach you for days. We have discovered something terrible about the humans." Dr. Veltharian's tentacles moved in agitated patterns. "Yes, I know about your discovery. Your observation post has been transmitting all data directly to the Galactic Council. We have been monitoring your research in real time." Neem's gas cloud condensed with confusion. "You have been watching us? Why did you not respond to our communications?" "Because," the professor said heavily, "your observations have created a crisis situation that required immediate attention from the highest levels of galactic government. What you witnessed Jake Martinez do to that bear has been classified as the most dangerous intelligence discovery in galactic history." Qualin's mandibles clicked rapidly. "Dangerous? We were going to recommend that humans be classified as a protected peaceful species, with warnings about their hidden combat capabilities." Dr. Veltharian's skin turned an even darker purple. "Protected, my dear students. The Galactic Council is currently debating whether Earth should be quarantined indefinitely or subjected to preemptive intervention before humans develop space travel." The three students stared at their professor in shock. "But why?" Zixtal asked. "Jake Martinez was protecting innocent people. His actions were heroic, not threatening." "That," said Dr. Veltharian, "is exactly what makes humans so terrifying." The professor went on to explain that the students' observation had not been an isolated research project. The Galactic Council had been monitoring Earth for decades, trying to understand human behavior before making contact. The students' assignment had been a test to see how new researchers would react to direct observation of human combat capabilities. Every species that achieves space travel goes through a phase of expansion and conquest, Dr. Veltharian explained. The Corathans conquered 12 systems before we learned to control our aggressive impulses. The Vorthak strip-mined entire planets before developing environmental awareness. The Cytherians enslaved 6 different species before evolving beyond their predatory instincts. Neem's gas swirled nervously. But humans seem to have already evolved beyond those behaviors. They work together, they help strangers, they protect the weak. Exactly, the professor said grimly. That is what makes them so dangerous. Other species grew out of their aggressive phases through exhaustion and failure. Humans have learned to channel their predatory instincts into protective behaviors. They have become cooperative hunters. The professor brought up a holographic display showing data from observation posts around Earth. The aliens saw footage of human emergency responders running into burning buildings, military personnel throwing themselves on explosives to save comrades, and ordinary citizens risking their lives to help strangers. Every day, humans perform acts of heroism that would be considered impossible by any other species, Dr. Veltharian continued. But they do not see these acts as heroic. They see them as normal behavior, as their duty. Qualin's typing became frantic as she processed this information. You are saying that humans are dangerous because they are too noble? I am saying that humans are dangerous because they have weaponized nobility, the professor replied. Species that fights to the death to protect strangers is a species that will never surrender, never compromise, and never accept defeat when they believe they are protecting something important. The professor showed them more footage from around Earth. Humans rescuing people from earthquakes, floods, and accidents. Humans traveling to other countries to provide medical aid to people they had never met. Humans dedicating their entire lives to protecting endangered animals or preserving environments. Look at their history, Dr. Veltharian said. When humans believe their cause is just, they become unstoppable. They have fought wars that lasted decades over principles. They have endured sieges that would have broken any other species. They have willingly died by the millions for abstract concepts like freedom and justice. Zixtal's crystal body had turned completely white, indicating fear beyond her ability to express. What happens when they decide that we are a threat to something they want to protect? That is the question keeping the Galactic Council awake at night, the professor replied. What happens when a species that can strangle grizzly bears with their bare hands decides that we pose a danger to their children? The professor brought up another display showing human technological development. Despite their relatively short lifespan, humans had progressed from primitive agriculture to nuclear weapons in just a few thousand years. Their rate of technological advancement was unprecedented in galactic history. They are already on the verge of developing faster than light. Travel, Dr. Veltharian warned. Our analysts estimate they will achieve interstellar capability within 50 years. Maybe less. Neem's gas cloud was so compressed with stress that he was barely visible. 50 years is not enough time to determine if they are truly peaceful or just waiting for the right opportunity to expand. That is the debate currently raging in the Galactic Council, the professor said. Some members want to make contact now, while humans are still confined to their home system. Others want to establish a quarantine zone around Earth and wait to see how they develop. And a few extremists are suggesting that Earth should be neutralized before humans become a galactic threat. Qualin stopped typing and looked directly at the professor. What do you think we should do? Dr. Veltharian was quiet for a long moment before answering. I think, he said slowly, that Jake Martinez may have doomed or saved our entire galaxy, and we will not know which for another century. The professor explained that human behavior was unlike anything in galactic records. Most species became less aggressive as they developed advanced technology and social structures. Humans seem to be becoming more protective and cooperative, while maintaining their combat effectiveness. They have created a civilization based on the principle that the strong should protect the weak, Dr. Veltharian said. But they define weak as anyone who needs help, regardless of species. They rescue animals from natural disasters. They establish nature preserves to protect plants and creatures that serve no economic purpose. They dedicate enormous resources to keeping disabled and elderly individuals alive and comfortable. Zixtal's color shifted to a confused orange. That sounds like behavior that would make them good galactic citizens. Or, the professor replied darkly, it could mean that they would see the galaxy as their responsibility to protect. What happens when humans decide that the Galactic Council is not governing effectively? What happens when they conclude that other species need to be protected from themselves? The professor showed them footage of human intervention in conflicts around their own planet. Humans regularly sent military forces to stop violence in other countries, often at great cost to themselves. They established international laws and organizations dedicated to protecting universal rights. They already police their own planet, Dr. Veltharian pointed out. How long before they decide to police the galaxy? The three students sat in stunned silence as they realized the implications of their discovery. They had come to Earth to study a primitive species and had instead uncovered evidence that humans might be the most dangerous force the galaxy had ever encountered. Professor, Qualin said finally, what happens to us now? Dr. Veltharian's skin shifted to a resigned gray color. Now, you write your report and wait for the Galactic Council to decide the fate of both humanity and galactic civilization. Your observations of Jake Martinez have become the most important intelligence document in our history. The professor's image flickered and disappeared, leaving the three alien students alone with the knowledge that their simple homework assignment had accidentally triggered a galactic crisis. 6 months had passed since the bear incident that changed everything. The three alien students had completed their report and been transferred to new assignments studying much safer species in distant parts of the galaxy. But the impact of their observations continued to ripple through galactic civilization. On Earth, Jake Martinez had no idea that his actions had triggered a crisis among the stars. He had returned to his normal routine as a park ranger, checking on campers and maintaining trails. The local newspaper had written a small article about his encounter with the bear, calling him a local hero. But Jake had been uncomfortable with the attention and asked them not to write any follow-up stories. The alien observation post still orbited Earth, but it was now staffed by senior researchers and military analysts instead of students. They continued to monitor human behavior, trying to understand the species that had become the galaxy's greatest concern. Dr. Lisa Campbell visited Jake regularly, both as his doctor and as his friend. During one of their conversations at the local coffee shop, she brought up something that had been bothering her. "Jake, I've been thinking about what you said after the bear attack," she said, stirring her coffee thoughtfully. "About making a good trade. Your life for the family's lives. Do you really think that way about yourself?" Jake shrugged, still showing some stiffness from his healing injuries. "It's not about thinking less of myself, it's about math. If my death could save 4 people, especially 2 kids, then it's a worthwhile trade. Any parent would understand that. But you're not their parent," Lisa pointed out. "Doesn't matter," Jake replied. "Those kids deserve to grow up and have families of their own. If I have to risk my life to make that happen, it's worth it." High above them, the alien analysts recorded every word of this conversation, adding it to the growing database of human behavior that was being studied by experts across the galaxy. Meanwhile, in the capital city of the Galactic Council, representatives from dozens of species continued to debate what to do about Earth. The debate had been going on for months, with no clear resolution in sight. Commander Zeth Khan of the Korathan military spoke passionately to the assembly. "We cannot ignore what we have seen. Humans are the most dangerous species we have ever encountered, precisely because they do not recognize their own danger. They will fight impossible odds without hesitation if they believe they are protecting someone." Ambassador Thilla of the Peaceful Etherian Collective disagreed. "Their protective nature could be an asset to galactic civilization. A species willing to risk everything to help others could become the greatest peacekeeping force in our history. Or the greatest threat," countered General Vexitar of the Cytherian Empire. "What happens when humans decide that our governments are not protecting our citizens effectively? They have a history of overthrowing rulers they consider unjust." The debate continued day after day with no consensus emerging. Some species wanted to establish contact immediately, hoping to guide human development in a positive direction. Others preferred continued observation, waiting to see how humans evolved as they reached for the stars. A few extremist factions still argued for intervention before humans developed interstellar travel. Back on Earth, the alien students who had started the crisis were struggling to adapt to their new assignments. Zixtal had been reassigned to study crystalline life forms on a peaceful planet where the most dangerous creature was a rabbit-like herbivore. But even there, she found herself constantly thinking about Jake Martinez and what his actions meant. "I cannot stop wondering," she said during a video call with her former teammates, "what we would have done in Jake's situation. Would any of our species fight a predator 8 times our size to protect strangers?" Neem, now studying gaseous organisms, in a nebula where violence was literally impossible, admitted his own doubts. "I have been analyzing my own species' behavior patterns. Etherians would have called for help and waited for assistance to arrive. We would not have engaged the predator directly." Qualin, assigned to catalog insect life on a world where the largest creature was the size of her thumb, had perhaps been affected most deeply by their experience. "I have reviewed the combat capabilities of every species in the galactic database. None of them match human willingness to accept casualties in defense of others. We are all more logical about survival." "Logical," Zixtal repeated. "Perhaps that is what makes humans so frightening. They are not logical when it comes to protecting others." The 3 former students had all required extensive psychological counseling after their Earth assignment. The concept of self-sacrifice for strangers was so foreign to their species that witnessing it had caused temporary mental instability. Dr. Veltharian had also been profoundly affected by the discovery. He had spent months studying human history and culture, trying to understand how a species could evolve such extreme protective behaviors. His findings had only made the galactic situation more complicated. Humans appear to have developed a collective survival strategy, he reported to the Galactic Council. Individual sacrifice for group benefit has become so ingrained in their culture that they no longer recognize it as unusual behavior. They expect it from themselves and celebrate it in others. The professor had discovered that human stories, movies, and literature were filled with heroes who sacrificed themselves for others. Children were taught from an early age that the highest virtue was helping those in need, even at personal cost. They train their young to be heroic, Dr. Veltharian explained to the council. They deliberately encourage the behaviors that we find so dangerous. As the months passed, more observations confirmed the pattern. Human emergency responders continued to risk their lives for strangers. Human military personnel continued to put themselves in danger to protect civilians. Human civilians continued to help each other during disasters and emergencies. The aliens also observed human scientific cooperation, noting how researchers from different countries shared information and resources to solve global problems. Humans seemed capable of working together on a planetary scale when they perceived a common threat or shared goal. This cooperation extends beyond their own species, noted one research report. Humans dedicate significant resources to protecting and preserving other life forms on their planet, including species that provide no economic benefit. The galactic community began to realize that humans might represent an entirely new type of civilization, one based on protection rather than expansion, cooperation rather than conquest. But the fear remained. What would happen when this protective, cooperative species developed the technology to travel between stars? Would they see the galaxy as something to protect, Would they view other species as needing their help? The debate in the Galactic Council continued, with no clear resolution. Some species began preparing for eventual contact with humanity, developing protocols for peaceful interaction. Others started planning defensive measures in case humans proved to be as dangerous as they appeared. And on Earth, Jake Martinez continued his daily patrols, unaware that his simple act of protecting a family had made humanity the most discussed species in galactic history. He helped lost hikers find their way, rescued injured animals, and educated visitors about wilderness safety. During his patrols, Jake often thought about the Davis family and hoped they were doing well. He had received a Christmas card from them, showing the whole family smiling and healthy. Emma's drawing of him fighting the bear was now framed on his wall at home. As Jake walked through the forest on another peaceful day, checking trail markers and enjoying the mountain air, he had no idea that dozens of alien analysts were watching his every move, trying to determine whether humanity would be the galaxy's salvation or its doom. The only thing Jake knew for certain was that if another family needed his help, he would not hesitate to provide it, regardless of the personal cost. It was simply who he was and who humans were. The galaxy would just have to decide whether that was terrifying or wonderful,